Hi everybody, in this video we are going to discuss about the other gland called as the pancreas from chemical coordination and integration. Okay, this is another gland which we are going to study under the endocrine glands. So here when we are going to study about the pancreas, the very first point that we have to remember is that we have to recollect that these endocrine glands can be heterocrine and holocrine. We said heterocrine and holocrine. So here is one which is called as what? Heterocrine gland. Holocrine endocrine glands means those endocrine glands which are involved in producing the hormones. But here the pancreas is called as heterocrine gland. It is not holocrine gland. Why it is called as heterocrine gland? Because this pancreas will be producing both acting as the exocrine gland and as well as the endocrine gland. It will be acting as the exocrine gland and as well as the endocrine gland. So that's why the pancreas is also called as what now? We can also call this as the heterocrine gland. Okay, we also call this as heterocrine gland. Okay, this is also called as the heterocrine gland. Okay, we are calling this as heterocrine gland. And here, why it is heterocrine gland means we are saying that it can be acting as what? Exocrine and as well as endocrine. As exocrine gland, it will be producing the pancreatic juice. Okay, it will be producing the pancreatic juice, which is important in digestion of various substances present in our food material. So pancreatic juice, when it is producing the pancreatic juice, it is directly pouring this pancreatic juice into the digestive system containing different types of enzymes. So here pancreas, when it is producing the pancreatic juice, it is called as what? Exocrine gland. Exocrine gland. And when it is involved in producing the hormones, we are calling this pancreas as endocrine gland. So otherwise, in a very simple way, we can say that pancreas is a composite gland. Pancreas is a composite gland because it is acting as both exocrine and as well as endocrine gland. And now if we are studying it as the endocrine gland, about 1 to 2 million islets of Langerhans, these are the cells. There are about 1 to 2 million cells which are called as what? Islets of Langerhans are present in the pancreas. Remember that this is the 1 to 2 million islets of Langerhans, which means it is just about 1 to 2% of the pancreatic tissue. It is not so huge part of the pancreas, but it is just of 1 to 2% of the pancreatic tissue. Okay, pancreatic tissue. And here now it is now having what? 1 to 2 million islets of Langerhans, we are saying. Within this group of cells known as islets of Langerhans, it is having the cells especially it is having the cells known as what? Alpha cells. Okay, islets of Langerhans are a group of cells present in what? In the pancreas. About 1 to 2 million we are saying. And from this 1 to 2 million, okay, there are a group of cells which can be called as what? Alpha cells. And there is another group of cells which are called as what? The beta cells. Alpha cells and beta cells. There are two different groups of what now? Cells. And these two together we are calling it as what? Islets of Langerhans. Now, alpha cells, very important point. Okay, alpha cells are involved in producing a hormone called as what? Glucagon. Okay, alpha cells are involved in producing a hormone called as glucagon, and this glucagon helps in maintaining normal blood glucose levels in the blood. This particular glucagon will help in maintain normal blood glucose levels. Normal blood glucose levels will be maintained. Okay, will be maintained with the help of this particular hormone called as glucagon. This is the main function of the glucagon. But otherwise, this glucagon acts, or otherwise it will be stimulating the liver cells. Liver is made up of what cells? We call them as hepatocytes. Liver is made up of cells known as hepatocytes. So glucagon acts on the hepatocytes, cells of the liver, or it will stimulate the cells of the liver called as hepatocytes, so that they will be involving in the process of what now? Glycogenolysis. Okay, glycogenolysis means what? Breakdown of glycogen. Breakdown of glycogen into glucose. Breakdown of glycogen into glucose. We have to remember what do you mean by glycogenolysis? Breakdown of glycogen into glucose. Breakdown of glycogen into glucose is called as glycogenolysis. Glycogenolysis. Okay, glycogen lysis, breakdown. Glycogen is breaking down to what now? Glucose. That is under the control of what now? The hormone called as glucagon. The hormone called as glucagon. Why? Where this process is taking place? It is taking place in the liver cells called as what? Hepatocytes. Because in the liver, the glucose is converted into insoluble product called as glycogen and it is stored. So whenever our body is in starving or it is starving for glucose, when there is less amount of glucose, then the glucagon will be acting upon the hepatocytes which are rich in containing the glycogen which is insoluble. And convert that glycogen back into what? Glucose and send it back into the blood. That's why we call this as the hormone called as glucagon. Okay, involving in a process called as what? Glycogenolysis. Not only in the process of glycogenolysis, it is also involved in the process of what? Gluconeogenesis. Already we came across this when we are talking about the adrenal gland. Okay, gluconeogenesis. We discussed about the cortisol, glucocorticoids, where gluconeogenesis means what? Formation of glucose from non-carbohydrate substances. So even in the process of producing glucose from non-carbohydrate substances, what is involved means it is the glucagon, the hormone that is released from the alpha cells. Alpha cells are part of what? The islets of Langerhans. Otherwise, islets of Langerhans is nothing but part of the endocrine gland, part of what? The pancreas. That's the point we have to remember now. And see, in both the cases, either it is glycogenolysis or gluconeogenesis. What is now formed? Glucose is formed. And this glucose is increasing now in the blood. It is increasing in the blood. So that's why this hormone called as what? Glucagon is called as what? Hyperglycemia. Okay? Hyperglycemic hormone. We call this hormone as what? Hyperglycemic hormone, which means there is increased levels of glucose or sugar in the blood. Increased levels of sugar in the blood. When there is increased sugar levels in the blood, we call it as hyperglycemia. So what do you mean by hyperglycemia? When there is increased sugar levels in the blood, we are calling it as hyperglycemia. How the increased sugar levels are taking place in the blood? It is because of process called as what? Glycogenolysis and gluconeogenesis. Okay, in both these cases, what is now released or formed? It is glucose present in the blood. So, with the help of what the glucose is increasing by these two processes? It is by glucagon. So that's why glucagon is called as hyperglycemic hormone. Remember this. Hyperglycemic hormone. Please remember that it is glucagon. And here at the same time, very important point that we have to remember is that it is increasing the sugar levels in the blood. It is increasing the sugar levels in the blood, but it is reducing the cellular glucose uptake and utilization. It is reducing what? The cellular glucose uptake and utilization, means the cells cannot take more amount of what? Glucose, and they cannot use this glucose, they cannot utilize this glucose. It is reduced. Okay, the uptake and utilization of glucose is reduced by this hormone called as glucagon. Okay, by this hormone called as glucagon. That this is a very important point and you should not get confused. Remember this point. Okay, so now in the same way, if we are seeing at the other group of cells called as beta cells. Okay, as we said, there are two types of cells of islets of Langerhans, alpha cells and beta cells. But otherwise, in depth if you are seeing, there are also other cells, we call them as gamma cells, which we are not going to discuss now. So here beta cells. Now beta cells are involved in producing another hormone called as what? Insulin. Okay, insulin. Alpha cells are producing glucagon. Beta cells are producing insulin. Now if you are seeing the insulin, what is the main function of the insulin? It helps in regulation of glucose homeostasis. Means what? It helps in regulating the regulation or balancing the amount of glucose inside the body. That is, we are calling it as what? Homeostasis. Homeostasis is a very simple, okay, term that we should keep in mind, that it states that maintaining internal environment. What do you mean by homeostasis? Maintaining internal environment. Now the glucose levels, okay, the environment of the glucose levels are maintained with the help of what now? Insulin. Insulin helps in maintaining the internal environment of the glucose. Please remember that. That one only we are saying it as what? Homeostasis. Okay. So insulin helps in regulation of glucose homeostasis. Glucose homeostasis. That's the point we have to keep in mind now. And at the same time, okay, here what we said when we are talking about the glucagon, we said that maintains normal blood glucose levels. It is regulating. It will not increase, allow it to increase nor decrease. Okay. Now insulin. Insulin acts upon the hepatocytes. Hepatocytes are the cells which are now, we already came across that they are present in what? The liver, we said. Okay. Hepatocytes are what now? The cells that are present in the liver. And here insulin acts upon the hepatocytes, that is on the liver cells, or insulin also acts upon what? The adipocytes. These are the cells that are present in the adipose tissue. These are present in the adipose tissue. Okay. Adipocytes are the cells present in the adipose tissue. Now on these two different types of cells, insulin will be acting. So when insulin acts upon the hepatocyte cells of the liver, adipocyte cells of the adipose tissue, it helps in cellular glucose uptake and utilization. Now it is helping in what? It is helping in cellular uptake. Means with the help of this now insulin, the cells can take what now? Glucose. Okay, glucose, and they can use this glucose now. But what we said regarding the glucagon, it reduces the cellular uptake and utilization. But here insulin is helping in taking up the glucose and its utilization by the cells. Cellular glucose uptake and utilization. So when the cells are taking the glucose, okay, that is there present in the hepatocytes or in the adipocytes, now there will be decrease in what now? There will be decrease in the glucose levels in the hepatocytes and adipocytes. So here if you are seeing, there will be rapid movement of glucose from the blood to the hepatocytes and adipocytes. Now that glucose, here what we said in the glucagon, when we are talking about the glucagon, what we said, there is increased levels of what? Glucose. There is increased levels of glucose in the blood. So that glucose will again now enter back into what? Hepatocytes and adipocytes. So there is a rapid movement of glucose from blood to the hepatocytes and adipocytes. Why there is movement of glucose into the hepatocytes, liver cells and adipose tissue? It's because from these hepatocytes and adipocytes, what is being released now? The glucose is released and it is taken up by the cells. There is cells are taking the glucose and they are utilizing it. So there is less amount of what now? Glucose present in the hepatocytes and adipocytes. But there is more amount of glucose in the blood. So that's why from the blood, the glucose will be entering into what now? It will be entering into the hepatocytes and adipocytes. So whenever the insulin acts upon the hepatocytes and adipocytes, there will be cellular glucose uptake and utilization and leads to the rapid movement of this glucose from the blood into the hepatocytes and adipocytes. And that's why, see here now, if you are clearly seeing, the sugar is moving from the blood into the hepatocytes and adipocytes. So now in the blood there is less amount of glucose. So because there is less amount of glucose, now we will be calling it as what now? Hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia means what? Decreased levels of sugar in the blood. Decreased levels of sugar in the blood. Please remember this word, hypoglycemia. Decreased sugar levels in the blood is called as hypoglycemia. So you have to remember, insulin helps in leading to what now? Hypoglycemia. But whereas glucagon helps in leading to what now? Hyperglycemia. Increased levels of sugar in the blood. That is called as hyperglycemia. So we are calling this hormone as what we said? Hyperglycemic hormone we said. So here not only insulin helping in leading to hypoglycemia, but it also helps in glycogenesis. Glycogenesis, okay, means glycogenesis. You know the meaning of glycogenesis means the beginning. Glycogen, formation of glycogen. Okay, glycogenesis means glucose. Okay, glucose will be now converted into glycogen. Will be now converted into glycogen. That this process, conversion of glucose into glycogen, is called as what? Glycogenesis. Okay, glycogenesis we are calling it as. And now with this we have to remember that these two, okay, hormones, okay, these two hormones are balancing the amount of sugar. They are not allowing it to increase nor it to decrease. Okay, these two hormones are helping in balancing the sugar levels in the body, okay, in the body. And that's why here, if there is increased amounts of sugar levels in the blood, if there is increased, okay, sugar levels in the blood, it may lead to one disorder which we call it as the diabetes mellitus. Okay, which we call it as what? Diabetes mellitus. Okay, this is a sugar disorder we say. Okay, diabetes mellitus. Okay, diabetes mellitus. Okay, it's a disease or a disorder we say, diabetes mellitus. What is diabetes mellitus now? When there is increased levels of sugar in the blood, we call it as diabetes mellitus. Okay, diabetes mellitus, which is a disease. Okay, disease which is caused due to increased levels of sugar in the blood, we are saying. And this can be treated by insulin therapy. It can be treated by insulin therapy. Please remember this. This disease, okay, this disease can be treated by what? Insulin therapy. Okay, insulin therapy means with the help of insulin, they can treat this disease called as diabetes mellitus. When a person is suffering with diabetes mellitus, this particular person will be losing sugar in their urine. Through the urine, they will be releasing so much of sugar. So that is an indication that he or she is suffering with what? Diabetes mellitus. Okay, excess of sugar will be lost through the urine. Then it is called as the diabetes mellitus. And not only with that, there are also other substances, okay, toxic substances which are also released through the urine, called as what? The ketone bodies. Okay, ketone bodies. Okay, ketone bodies are also been lost from the urine. Okay, from the urine. So ketone bodies plus what? Sugar will be released or lost through the urine. Okay, through the urine. In the case of a person who is suffering with what? The disease called as diabetes mellitus. Okay, diabetes mellitus. So here we understood that the pancreas is an endocrine gland and acting as exocrine gland. But here we came across two hormones under endocrine gland. Okay, endocrine gland consisting of what? Islets of Langerhans, having two different types of cells called as alpha cells, beta cells. Those are alpha cells are producing glucagon and beta cells are producing insulin.